All right, now let's get into skills, aka special moves is what you're gonna hear people call it. I've already talked about the attacks of using light, medium, and heavy. These are your standard buttons. What you're gonna hear from regular fighting game lingo, from fighting game nomenclature, is that these will be referred to as normal attacks. These are all normal attacks. Even crouching U will be referred to as a normal attack. Jumping attacks, all normal attacks. What special attacks are a different class of moves that have to be performed in a special way. For example, Gran has the ability to throw a projectile across the screen. This is one of his skills. He can throw a projectile, which again in fighting game nomenclature, no matter what they throw, everyone calls it a fireball. So if you hear someone say projectile or fireball, it's basically the same thing. You're gonna hear a lot of people say, throwing a fireball, throwing a fireball. That's something Gran can do here. He can throw a fireball. Catalina can throw a fireball as well. Another skill that Gran can use is this move right here. This move is gonna be called generically the uppercut or the DP, also known as the dragon punch. This all comes from Street Fighter notation here. If I actually go to the command list, you'll actually see that the fireball here is called the Ragnarok and the uppercut is called the Rising Sword. Most people when they play fighting games are just gonna call it the fireball or the DP. That's the way it's gonna work. If you want to call it Rising Sword and Ragnarok, I mean, more power to you. A lot of people are just going to call it by a generic term. Gran also has another special special move, ability, that, for example, he lunges forward and swipes with his sword. And he has one last ability, which he comes at you with the boot. Again, none of these are the official names of the attacks. If you actually look at the command list, the sword swipe is known as the overdrive surge, and the boot is known as the follow-up. I prefer calling it the boot because he comes at you with the boot! Like so, and he kicks you, and it hurts and does a lot of damage.
Formidable.
But those are the special abilities, the skills, the special moves that Gran has. Now, in traditional fighting games, special moves are usually done by a motion plus a button. So for example, for Gran, I have the ability to move the controller from down and roll the controller to forward. So it's down, down, forward, forward. Look at the virtual stick at the bottom of the screen. Down, forward, forward, and I can hit light attack right afterwards.
Formidable.
So I want to do that as quickly as possible. So I want to do something like this and hold forward afterwards. And if I hit light punch, it ends up throwing the Ragnarok. It ends up throwing the fireball. So when you see people list the input as down, down, forward, and forward, it's not down, tap down, forward, tap forward. Do not tap the three directions as you just saw right there. Roll it forward. And then that will allow you to perform the move. Now, depending on which button you use to perform the move, you will get different kind of things. As you can see, if I perform it with the light button, I throw a fireball. If I perform it with the medium button, Gran actually does a sword swing and then he throws a fireball. So if I'm close enough, I can actually hit with that into the fireball, whereas the light one just throws the fireball only. If I do it with the heavy button, you'll notice that you'll hear this shing sound effect, and Gran glows yellow for a very brief second. I'll get into that in just a little bit. I'll explain what the glowing yellow means in just a little bit. So that's how you perform the special moves for characters. For the rising upper, I have to move from forward, roll the controller to down, and then go to down forward. Or I can kind of do holding forward and then spin the controller around, like so, to down forward, making sure I pass through down. Again, please look at the virtual controller down there. If I do this and then hit a button, I will perform the rising upper. Again, I can roll it like so, and I can also kind of do a little circular motion. And if you notice, inputting a bunch of extra inputs doesn't matter. If I try to do the fireball, if I try to do the Ragnarok, but I do it from back and roll all the way forward, doesn't matter. If I try to do forward, down, down, forward to do the rising upper, and I go all the way back, but you can see I'm passing through those 3 spots, it doesn't matter. I'm still performing the uppercut. So you can put in in fact, I can spin the controller all the way around if I wanted to, really fast, and I'll still be able to perform the uppercut like that. See how sloppy that is, and the uppercut still comes out. Again, different buttons. Light will make it go kind of low to the ground. Medium makes me go higher, and heavy makes me do 2 of them in a row, and I'm glowing yellow. In order to do the sword thrust or the follow-up, I can actually do, it's supposed to be down, down, back, and back. And hit light, and you can see I do the sword thrust. If I do the medium button, I come out with the boot. And then if I do the heavy one, I come out with an even shinier boot. There's a little bit more details for Gran. You can actually cancel the sword thrust into the boot as well. That's an option that you have. But for every character, there's going to be a lot of different inputs. So, for example, Zeta has forward, forward plus button or down, down plus button. So this is a different way to input it. And on these ones, yes, you do have to return to the neutral position. You have to hit forward, let go, forward again. And when you hit the button right away, like this, you'll perform their special move. Same thing with down, down, and button. So all the different characters will all have different special moves, and some characters have more complex inputs than other characters. But for the most part, that's kind of what you're going to have to see in order to do special moves. This is very common in almost every fighting game. Most fighting games have these inputs for your special move. One thing I want to talk about a little bit on the numpad notation again, if you're used to numpad notation, or if you want to learn numpad notation, or just to help you because you'll see these numbers all the time and you won't know what the heck people are talking about. Numpad again notation indicates the direction that you are moving on the controller. If you look at all of these points here on the virtual controller down there, there are 9 different positions. There's 8 different positions I can move the controller to. I can have down, down, back, up, forward, down, back, and down. Down, forward, and down. Well, if you look at your numpad and assign all of those positions to the numpad, down, this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then not holding the joystick is 5. This is 6, this is 7, and up, back, up is 8, and up, forward is 9. So you map all directions on the controller to the number pad that you see on your keyboard. So if I wanted to do a quarter circle forward motion to perform the fireball, for example, the down, down, forward, forward, you roll the controller and hit L, you'll see it written a lot instead as 2, 3, 6, L. 2, 3, 6, L. And that's because if you look at your numpad, 2, 3, 6 stands for down, down, forward, and forward. And so that's what you'll see a lot. And so if I wanted to do this motion over here to do the sword thrust, it would be 2, 1, 4. And all of this always assumes that your character is facing right. So even if I switch sides over here, if you read 6, you want to pretend that 6 means you're facing right. So 6 is always going to be forward on the controller, even though I'm facing the opposite direction. 2, 3, 6 is always going to be down, down, forward, forward into button. So that's one little bit confusing thing about number notation, but numpad notation is very quick to type. And it is also language universal, which is a reason why a lot of people use it. This game is played throughout the world. And to say things like QCF or quarter circle forward or down, down, forward, like D, D, F, F, you know, for foreign countries, it's a little bit harder for them to parse than them all also having a numpad on their keyboard. And so it's a very universal descriptor, which is one of the biggest proponents for using numpad notation. So it is something that you'll have to learn once you start jumping into the internet and start reading about a lot of these things. So if you go to Dustloop, for example, if you go to their wiki, they'll tell you how to perform the moves using numpad notation. And, you know, as Ernir says down there, for the DP motion, if it's forward, down, down, forward, I can actually just say 6-2-3. So 6-2-3, and it makes it a little bit quicker to write. And trust me, there are a lot more crazy notations out there that might be a little bit easier to type out on numbers. Okay, so I've talked to you about having to do special moves. So everybody has these special moves. What makes special moves so special? The main thing is that special moves usually have extra powers associated for them. For example, I can throw a projectile across screen, and this is really nice to have, just to be able to throw you know, projectiles at the opponent. I can fight them from full screen and get them worried about things. The Rising Sword, for example, is a great move to counter characters who are jumping at you. I mentioned that the 2H is a good anti-air button. Having the Rising Sword is also a good attack to counter people who are jumping at you, like so, and does pretty good damage as well. The sword thrust or the boot are good ways for you to attack the opponent and close the distance and get in on them. So it's a good way for me to go from this range to attack, or to go from this range and come in with a boot, for example. So I can attack from this range, whereas none of my normals will hit from here. So it's just a nice way to have moves that travel distance and to attack. The other thing that makes special moves very important is that they will always do damage to your opponent, even if they defend against it. If you look at Catalina's bar right here, I can attack with all the things that I want. Universal overheads, I can attack with jumps, I can attack with everything. I can try to attack with lows and everything, and she'll never take any damage. However, if I make her block special moves, you'll notice that her life starts draining. This is actually really important for some characters. The ability to do damage via special moves is a good way to scare the opponent from defending too much. So, in other words, I can actually keep doing this until you're dead. So if I put her at 5 health here, so she's at 5 health now, you'll notice that she blocks this, and she's losing health. Now, as soon as she gets to no life, she's at no life right now. The way that the game works is that if you block a special move, you will die. This doesn't happen in a lot of other games. A lot of other games now, if you get drained to no health, you won't actually die. However, in this game, there is such thing as chip damage death. And you can die by blocking a special attack with no life left. Yes, no matter what, you have to have your life reduced to 0 before you can take the chip death. If you have, like, let's say your health is at like 4 pixels and something does 10 pixels worth of damage, it will always drain you 0 first, and then the next hit will chip you. In fact, it's the next move that will chip you. So even though this has drained her all the way to 0 health, it won't actually kill her until the next one hits her. That's important to note. And yes, throws will kill.
I'll let you have this one.
And yeah, no matter how low of the life you have, late techs will always survive. Even though you take damage from a late tech, you will always at least live. However, if you do not tech at all, then yeah, you're dead.
Perfect.
There you go.